what was interesting was, although there was less than 200 people in the room, more than 17,412 people were reached with my message. Less than 200 people in the room, but 17,412 people were reached with my message. Now, Money Guy Supermodel Jim Do agrees that 17,412 will always be better than 200. Now, how did I do this? Well, it's simple. Joe's team strategically, purposefully picks certain presentations done by Genius Network members to be released as podcasts. I knew that, and my immediate purpose, my immediate focus was to get a presentation that would be released as a podcast.
Paul Colligan's lifestyle and business strategies are designed to tackle the challenges and opportunities of today's ever-changing information economy. His company, the Podcast Partnership, leverages technology to expand reach and revenue for businesses and creates digital influencers with the simple sound of the human voice. Paul's clients include best-selling authors Joe Polish, Kathy Colby, Brendan Burchard, JJ Virgin, Mike Koenigs, Donald Miller, Jeff Walker, Frank Kern, and others. Past projects have included work with Microsoft, StoryBrand, the U.S. State Department, Rubicon International, Piranha Marketing, Pearson Education, and more. Paul is a popular speaker on technology topics and presents at events around the world, including the European Business Podcasting Summit, Podcast Movement, Google Tech Talks, Macworld, Inbound Marketing Summit, Social Media Marketing World, and Microsoft Tech Ed. He is the creator of the Podcast Report and has authored 11 technology and thought leadership books, 9 of which launched as Amazon bestsellers. Paul lives in beautiful Portland, Oregon. He has a wonderful, beautiful wife and daughters. He enjoys theater, music, great food, and travel. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Paul Colligan.
Thank you so much, everybody. So there I was, and it wasn't the first time. There I am at the Genius Network headquarters presenting for not the first time. See, 937 days ago in Phoenix, Arizona, I shared that, funny enough, 1,764 days ago, a total of 2,701 days ago, I was on stage at New York at one of the first annual events doing a presentation on podcasting. And what was interesting was, although there was less than 200 people in the room, more than 17,412 people were reached with my message. Less than 200 people in the room, but 17,412 people were reached with my message. Now, Money Guy Supermodel Jim Do agrees that 17,412 will always be better than 200. Now, how did I do this? Well, it's simple. Joe's team strategically, purposefully picks certain presentations done by Genius Network members to be released as podcasts. I knew that, and my immediate purpose, my immediate focus was to get a presentation that would be released as a podcast. Now, to speak in the words of the immortal poet Brittany, I did it again. I did another presentation, and this is the one I spoke to earlier, about the power of podcasting, a ridiculously exponential reach of a podcast. You can find that online, all sorts of different places. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to keep doing it. Now, to learn how to do a podcast, how to do a 10-minute talk that makes great sense as a podcast, see the episode, The Exponential Power of a Podcast. Now, by the way, little tip here. I just told you to go listen to a podcast, something you're going to want to start doing a lot more. Now, where do I get this podcast? Well, something has changed tremendously recently, and actually some really big news even this morning. It's no longer get your podcast at Apple or get your podcast at Google or one of the other strange places. Podcasting is now literally wherever you get your audio. It is completely and totally impossible to find an online audio place that doesn't have podcasts. Audible. Remember when we used to have a book and spend a lot of money to get in Audible? Well, the episode, The Power of Podcasting, a ridiculously exponential reach of a podcast with Paul Colligan, Genius Network, episode number 96, that is at Audible, along with Atomic Habits, along with Mr. Obama, along with Ready Player 2, wherever you get your audio. And by the way, Amazon, if you search Amazon now for Genius Network Podcast, the Genius Network Podcast pops up in Amazon, wherever you get your audio. Now, one of the things I said in the last episode was that if you text network to 503-966-8066, I will send you the slides. I will send you the worksheet. Now, of course, you're in Genius. You don't have to do that. It comes to you automatically. We'll get it to you at the end of this. But that's what I said in the last episode. And in this 10-minute talk, I'm going to tell you the same. Text network to 503-966-8066. And we've got these slides and some more tools on how all of this comes together.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
You see, properly positioned podcasting, my friends, is becoming more and more profitable every single day. Now, I gave you some wrong numbers at the beginning of this. I want to give you some more wrong numbers. It's not 17,412 hits, media messages. It's actually 32,299 since my last time, the last conversation we had. And the last time we chatted, I showed you this great, headline that Apple Podcasts continues to grow as the first show hit 500,000 downloads, as the catalog topped 500,000 podcasts. Again, I was wrong. There are now 1.7 million podcasts growing every day. There's more than 43 million total episodes available in the feeds. If you want some stats to make your mind go crazy, go to podcastindustyinsights.com. Now, the previous golden thread, oh yeah, Joel, I listen. The previous golden thread of that previous episode that you can look up online was your content doesn't have to be amazing. Your content just has to be relevant. And we chatted at the last thing about leveraging podcasts and podcast networks, and very much Joe's podcast and Joe Podcasting Network. You see, when you're part of this group, and by the way, everybody watching this right now, when we do this live, is part of the group. When you're part of this group, this is what you have to leverage. This is what you have to make use of. This is what, when you serve, when you do these things properly, some pretty amazing things can happen. But this is a new 10-minute talk. So, Joel, we've got a new golden thread. Now, there are only 103 people in here. At least I took that a few minutes ago. Whenever Mimi pops up on stage, we all take screenshots. 103 participants watching this live, watching this on the Zoom chat, but more will get it on YouTube. Evan's here to help us get even more on YouTube. More will get it on the podcast. And this is the power of what we're looking at. You see, here's the secret. Yes, I'm the big podcasting guy. Yes, I'm a fan of podcasting. But for you Genius Network members, I want you to remember something very, very important. There is literally, completely, and totally no better time to do this than right now, especially for you geniuses. So let's go through the process step by step. Step one, you need a 10-minute talk worth podcasting. Not all 10-minute talks are worth podcasting. Now, we have that previous episode that you can go to find out how to make your 10-minute talk worth podcasting. And I'll talk to you about an asset inside of Genius Network that you can completely and totally leverage at no additional charge to give yourself a 10-minute talk worth podcasting. But by the way, whenever you do a presentation, make it worth podcasting. And then your podcast can show up at places like iHeartRadio. My dear mom to this day, who still believes she can't listen to podcasts because she doesn't have an Apple and that they're too complicated to listen to, she was so happy the day I told her I was on iHeartRadio, because now mom thinks I'm on the radio now. And by the way, it's not just iHeartRadio, it's Audible, it's iHeartRadio, it's Apple, it's Google, it's Spotify, it's TuneIn, it's Overcast, it's Pocket Cast, it's Amazon, it's Pandora, it's Stitcher, it's radio.com, it's Podbean. As I said earlier, it is everywhere you find audio. Now, step two, this is why this moment in time that we're at is so key. See, Joe's on sabbatical. You know how much content Joe's going to release this year? New content, at least? 0. if there was ever a time to go to, the leadership here at Piranha, at Genius, and say, hey, I've got a 10-minute talk worth podcasting, this is the year to do it. Because when Joe comes back, he's going to have a lot to say. So this is an urgent call right now. See, 2021 is the year of Joe's sabbatical. He is going away. He's working. And yes, Jim, and yes, some others are worried about that, coming cell phone call at some point. But they're still producing podcasts with Genius Network. They're still publishing. The numbers are getting better than ever. Boy, if there was ever a time to dangle something fantastic in front of them, this is it. Now, step 3, this is really important. You need a show, you need a 10-minute talk that adds proof of the value of being in Genius. So we're going to break out the abacus. And you know who's a big fan of abacus? I think we all know who a big fan of abacus is. Anyway, my first 10-minute talk was the order of your deck talk. It was 192 views, YouTube. Last time we saw that, it's 328 now. Then we did the Podcaster Parish presentation, 468 YouTube, 606 now. And we did the exponential impact of a podcast, which is what I did last time. So we had 0 views. We have 840 now. And don't you worry, Evan's making those numbers go up. Now, the order of your deck presentation, when I spoke with you last time, 2,962 touches, now 5,715 touches. Paul, wait a minute, more than 2,000 touches of a presentation of a 10-minute talk that's more than 4 years old? Yes. Podcaster Parish, another 3,000 downloads of a podcast that's like 6 or 7 years old. Now, I had no numbers for the exponential impact presentation I did earlier, but since those days ago, 8,650 downloads. So since we last chatted by getting my podcast in Joe's network, 32,299 media connections, 94.5 of which was podcasting. That's more than 34 connections to the right audience with the right message a day. For those of you who are watching this live in Zoom, if 34 connections to the right audience every single day is a good thing, give me a what there in the chat. Now, the cool thing is I'm adding another the mix, my slide's off. I'm adding it to the mix here. I'm doing one more. Oh yeah, you see what I did there. Here I go again. But the fact of the matter is, after this presentation goes out, I will easily have, coming from Genius Network, more than 50 connections a day. That was a presentation worth podcasting. That was a presentation that explains the value of being in Genius. Step 4, you want to add Genius connections to you. Remember when I said earlier, text the word network to 503-966-8066, unless you were Genius. Yeah, you see what I did there. Spotify, there's the link to the episode. There's the link to subscribe. We do all the strategic links. We do all the strategic clickbacks. You build this into the presentation so that you have people who are following up with you and are looking for what it is that you have to offer within the confines of Genius. So the Genius Connections formula is this. You tell them where to get more. See, in this episode, I just told you where to get, the precursor to this episode. I give you a valuable offer. I gave you that number to text to get the slides, to get the worksheets, to get the information, and I give you the reason to subscribe. Paul, why should I subscribe to this podcast that I'm listening to right now? I want you to subscribe to this podcast so that you can hear future examples of what others are going to do. See, what I just did there was I pre-sold your 10-minute talk on Joe's network. So again, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you can hear an example of what others have done and learn from them. 10-minute talk worth podcasting. Leverage the less Joe time that we're in, add proof of value, add Genius connection, and you are done. Yes, extremely meta stuff going on, but really, really powerful meta stuff. So what do we do here? Well, I want you to do 2 simple things. And again, we're going to hit these step by step. Now, there are only 2, but it's only a 10-minute talk, and we'll go from there. Step 1, I want you to design a 10-minute talk worth podcasting. Now, I want you to leverage something. I want you to leverage something huge. I want you to leverage something very, very powerful. Joel Weldon. One of the things that happens is you as a Genius member, and again, remember, I'm doing a 10-minute talk about how valuable it is to be a Genius member. is the amazing and fantastic Joel Weldon will work with you and will help you plan out your 10-minute talk worth podcasting. No additional charge for those of you who are in Genius Network. For those of you who aren't, definitely look up Joel online, and we will have links to Joel in the show notes. Now, step 2, you want to have a Genius bonus connection to you. Now, it's got to have value. It's got to have all those things we chatted about. But for those of you who want to build a Genius bonus connection, I have another point of leverage, me. Everybody in Genius, if you want to work on a Genius bonus connection for your 10-minute talk designed to go on Joe's network, I'm there for you. Contact me. We'll set up the call. No additional charge at all. This is where I leave you. Quite simply, it's 3 things. Do this for Joe. He's gone this year. Imagine what would happen if he came back in 2022. Imagine if he came back in 2022 and there were more downloads than ever before because of the content that we produced that helped people see the value of being in the Genius Network. And by the way, in doing this for Joe, this is the part of being genius, is you will do this for yourself as well. My benefits, my connections for being in Joe's podcast network are overwhelming every time worth the price of admission. And then finally, let's do this smart. Let's do this strategic. Let's do this genius. Thank you very much. I'll tell you something that people forget. We tend to think of podcasting as a show. What is the topic of the week? You know, at the time of this recording, the topic of the week is the insanity happening in the nation's capital. Well, the problem is when you do the topic of the week, in 4 days, people aren't going to care. You know, and the problem is when you do something about a very specific time, a very specific place, you have a minimal shelf life. This 6-year-old podcast presentation that I did back in New York, that by the way, was the jumping point for the 11 podcasts that they now do at Strategic Coach. It's still valid. It's still viable. So one of the things you do in podcasting is think about it. Are you going to design a show that has a 1-week shelf life, a 1-month shelf life, or a shelf life forever? One of the things we have internally, if people want this, we can strategically get this out on our mindset scorecard, which is a coach tool. We tell everyone produce assets, not episodes. Assets live forever. Episodes have a certain shelf life. Joe, I'm allowed to share this. On the average month, less than 1 out of every 5 downloads, is new content. More than 4 out of every 5 downloads is content from the old category because Joe didn't do the interview with X on a certain topic only good for the month of August 2014. He gets these brilliant people, he gets these genius people to do these interviews that absolutely last forever. And so this is a big strategy.
That's great.
Produce assets, not episodes. How do you know they're an asset? Well, when they're just as good 4 years later as they are today. How do you know they're an asset? When they're not a podcast, people would still consume the content. How do you know they're an asset? When you put them on a CD and you give them to somebody who doesn't know you, doesn't know what you do, could benefit from it. But as you build out your podcasting strategy, build assets. And I know Evan with YouTube would tell the exact same thing. There's absolutely no reason to build something only good for this week unless you hate yourself deep down. Produce assets, not episodes.
Great presentation.
Thank you, Tim.
I get that it's driving potential members to Genius Network. How are you monetizing it for yourself? So you're doing podcasts. How are you generating revenue?
Well, here's the thing. If this is the world of people who are doing podcasts right now, okay, this is the world of people who are making money from them strategically. Most people just get in front of a microphone, they do the topic of the week, and they hope something happens. I've spoken with people with millions of downloads who have no idea how long somebody listens into their show. So I have done very specifically episodes about people who want to be strategic. There are people who are like, wait, that's too much work. You know what? They don't text me. You know, I do episodes very specifically about the strategy behind of this. For those who aren't interested, they hang up pretty early in the process. See, I've done an asset only for someone who is interested in what it is that I am presenting. You'll never find an episode of my show of what is a good microphone to buy. You know, you'll never find an episode of my show of how to host your podcast for as cheap as is humanly possible. I only do the topics and I only do the things that my audience is interested in. And it's a tiny niche, but you know what? They pay well. and we're doing great time and we're seeing some amazing results.
Thank you, Paul. Good question, Tim. Joel, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Paul. That was wonderful. Would you tell them, when we started working together, 6 years ago, the definition of a podcast?
You're going to hit me right here. Oh man, I don't have it necessarily memorized. And this is one of the things that I knew Joel would come after me. I had to slice some things in the presentation. A podcast is audio or video online made available for immediate consumption or subscription.
Thank you.
And there are a lot of people who you put a video online at your website. Yeah, there's no subscription there. A lot of people don't realize that you can do video, not audio. You can do both. All those options are there, but it's audio or video placed online, made available for immediate consumption or subscription.
Awesome.
And by the way, subscription's the win. It's not they listen to one episode, it's they listen to multiple.
That's great. Thank you. Good question, Joel. And then I got a question from Tiffany. What is the best strategy to create the 10-minute talk worth podcasting, i.e. steps, areas to focus on?
Well, first of all, that was the last 10-minute talk. So get that 10-minute talk, get the worksheet that comes with that 10-minute talk. And then the great thing is leverage Joel. Joel, I want to produce a 10-minute talk worth podcasting. He will absolutely, completely, and totally make sure that it is worth that. Now, with that said and done, an asset, something that's going to make Joe look good by publishing it out to the world. Something that's going to show the benefit of being inside of Genius Network. And something, honestly, that's not going to give away too much of the farm, because there is some stuff internally. This part isn't, this part is being recorded and it's for the members, but this isn't being broadcast out to the entire world. So you got to be strategic. But if you go through that process of building something that Joe's going to want to publish to the world, that's going to be just as good in 5 years as it is before, that you work with Joel to make sure it's not too much, that's how you do it. And the worksheet in the past episode goes through that whole process.
And by the way,
Arne and I first talked about it. The idea was this is almost, building a podcast presentation worth podcasting part 2.
I got another question from Denise Gosnell, which is, how do you get your podcast to show up on Audible and Amazon? It doesn't seem to be automatic.
Great question, Denise. And let me give you a big picture. Let me give you a small picture. Legally, big names like Amazon and the other big names, they now need to get your permission to post your podcast, because, you posted without my permission, lawsuits, that kind of thing. So there is a website at Amazon where you submit. If you are on the Libsyn system for podcasting, it's actually a checkbox at Libsyn, but you have to take that physical step of telling Amazon that it's okay. And by the way, when you're okay at Amazon, you're also okay at Audible. And it's really, really cool to be on Audible for absolutely free. A lot of fun. So if you're at Libsyn, it's a checkbox inside of the destinations area. If you're anywhere else, it's a slight form. I think Mike Koenig's is at Blueberry, and I think Mike did it. He probably gave it to his Who team, so he probably doesn't have the link, but it's just a simple website. Couple lines of code.
Okay, I hope you found that video awesome and useful. So if you want to get a free copy of my book, I want you to click here. And if you want to watch some more videos that'll be useful and awesome, click here. Go ahead. They're over here. Do it now. Come on. Thank you. Watch them.